Listen, we have to have a chat because I don't know about you, but I'm very tired of constantly being bombarded with you need this serum, you need this workout set, you need this shampoo and conditioner, whatever, to become the best version of yourself, because that, quite frankly, is just not true. I would argue that the most impactful things you could do for yourself cost little to nothing other than your time. So I wanted to make this video specifically dedicated to becoming the best version of yourself without spending any money, because I am a firm believer that you don't need to be spending a ton of money, and you probably don't need a single new product either. Regardless of what social media has made us think, I feel like there is so much that you can actually do that doesn't cost anything. I guess when I say they don't cost anything, I really mean they don't require pulling out your credit card, because they do cost a little bit when it comes to your time, your commitment, your energy, your willingness to give up being comfortable in order to become the version of yourself that you want. But you get the picture. So today I want to share all of the little changes that I've made over time that I feel like have made me feel more confident in myself, happier, healthier, and just overall like I'm living in that better version of myself. So grab a cup of tea and let's get comfortable. That is way too hot still. Let's start first off with more like mental and energy glow up. I feel like the first thing that I would recommend doing is a deep clean of your digital life, who you're following on social media, what you're listening to. I feel like all of that has a much bigger impact than we really give it credit for, because we're subconsciously listening to all of that information and absorbing it. And if you're constantly listening to negative things and complaining, or people telling you that things aren't possible for you, it's gonna be a lot harder, because you're gonna have that kind of ingrained thought process that it's not attainable, or it's not possible, or you can't do whatever it is that you want to do, right? Maybe it's posting on social media, maybe it's getting a master's degree, maybe it's getting your PhD. There are so many different things and different career paths, and I feel like living in LA, I've been very fortunate to see just how many different options and opportunities there are out there. So don't count yourself out for those before you've even tried. You know what I mean? And I feel like the best way for you to do that is curate what you're consuming and what you are listening to, and doing your best to really show yourself what your dream reality could look like by following and curating what you're consuming on social media, in your email, on podcasts, whatever it is that you're giving to your brain, feeding your brain. Reading is another thing that I think is just so impactful. Whether you're reading fiction or nonfiction is irrelevant. I feel like it really expands your worldview. So one way that I think that you should do that is definitely checking out your public library. I use the app Libby. I'm based in the US, so I think most US-based libraries use it. It might be global, I'm not sure. If you go into your local library and you sign up for a library card, you can typically use the app Libby to check out ebooks, which you can read on your phone, a Kindle, whatever you want. They have just like the Libby app, you can read it in there too. So you don't need a brand new device, you can use whatever you already have, but I have found that to be really helpful. And then anytime I see a book on like TikTok or Instagram that I want to read, or even Pinterest, I go ahead and go in the Libby app and I place a hold. There is sometimes a wait, but I feel like the wait is okay. And you can also browse the app for just things that are readily available to you. In that same vein, Spotify, if you have a Spotify subscription, has audiobooks, and I'll link in the description. I have a playlist of glow up audiobooks that I feel like are really fun and like the popular books that you see online, and you don't have to pay any more if you already have a Spotify subscription. And if you're a student, I think that that's relatively inexpensive. Another thing that I have found to be incredibly impactful is journaling. I feel like it is something that takes a little bit of work to get into. It's definitely not something that I feel like came naturally to me. I feel like I'm much more quiet overall. Like I'm not always that chatty. So for me, journaling, I was kind of like, okay, well, what am I supposed to write about? But the way that has worked the best for me is morning pages, which is just 2 to 3 pages of whatever comes to mind. Sometimes I'm literally writing like, oh, well, my hand hurts. Sometimes I'm writing out a to-do list, or sometimes I'm like really much more in my thoughts, but it means that every single morning I have the opportunity to get that on paper instead of just having it like ruminate in the back of my mind. I feel like the other nice thing about that is that it just frees up a lot of your mental space before consuming anything else when you do it first thing in the morning. However, if that's not for you and you're very overwhelmed by 2 blank pages, Pinterest has a million different journaling prompts. Again, you don't need a new notebook. You could write it in the Notes app. If you're more of a yapper, you could also do like a voice memo to yourself, and you can keep those, delete them, whatever you want. But I feel like anything that lets you really sit with your own thoughts, especially in today's world where we're like constantly consuming other people's opinions through social media and videos like this one, being able to sit with your own thoughts and like really process what is you versus what is other people's outside opinion is so incredibly helpful. Another thing that I think makes a really big difference is having some kind of gratitude practice, even if it's just like in the morning, writing down kind of like that 5-minute journal style of like, these are 3 things that I'm grateful for. If you live with someone, your spouse, a partner, a friend, whatever, maybe you guys share like a couple of things that you're grateful for at the end of the day. Anything that kind of brings that perspective back of like, I do have a lot of good in my life, because I feel like it's very easy to focus on the things that we don't have yet that we want, but there's a strong likelihood that the things that you have now are a product of what you were building 1 to 2 years ago. So being able to really sit and be like, wow, I'm so grateful for the space that I'm in. I'm so grateful for the friendships that I've cultivated over the last few years. Anything like that, or even something super simple. Maybe you're just grateful for your morning coffee, or that it's sunny out and it's like starting to get a little bit warmer as the seasons are changing. I feel like anything that can bring the focus back to what you already have just puts you in a much different mindset when you're going into the day, ending the day. Another thing that I have found extremely impactful is affirmations. I know that at first they seem very, very cheesy. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you. The first few times that I wrote them, I was like, this is absolutely absurd. But I think what's really interesting about affirmations is it's the same thing, right? We're trying to program our brain to think differently. And for a lot of us, you know, we only see what we have been close to. So it can be really difficult if you're like, okay, well, I want to do this big scary thing and I don't know anyone that's doing that, to be able to do it or even take the action steps, because you're just like, oh, well, that's just like clearly not for me, because it's not anything that I've really had proximity to. So I feel like affirmations are a good way to kind of reprogram what we've decided is attainable for ourselves. So maybe you have affirmations around being good with people, making more friends, being super friendly. Maybe you have affirmations around making more money. Maybe you have affirmations about being really good at your job. There's so many different ways and approaches that you can take to affirmations, and I feel like there's a lot of different ways that you can do them. I personally really like writing them in a journal and then saying them out loud at the end. So I might write them out 2 or 3 times in the morning or the evening, and then I might say them out loud. Or you could have just sticky notes around the house, or you could add it just like as a background on your computer or your phone, or even like little reminders that you can have throughout the day that just pop up on your phone with those affirmations on them. I think any of those can be really helpful, because again, we're just really trying to cultivate a positive mindset that's going to allow you to do the things that you want to do. Next, I want to talk more about like a glow up for your overall lifestyle, which I feel like is more feeding into your habits and routines and those things that you do every single day that slowly add up over time. If you've read the book, The Power of Habit, this is going to be familiar, but one thing that they talk about in that book is a keystone habit, which is basically like a habit that kind of overflows into the rest of your life. So for a lot of us, that's probably going to be being on our phone or watching TV at night. So you're staying up too late, you're not going to bed on time, then you're not waking up in the morning. It might be snoozing the alarm or grabbing your phone first thing in the morning, so you end up scrolling and then you've wasted 30 minutes and you really wanted to get to like a workout class or something, but it ends up not happening because you have that like small roadblock. And it's those kinds of habits that really help us create this kind of waterfall effect almost, of like it spills out into every other aspect of your routine and your daily lifestyle. So those are the kind of things that I would really start focusing on if you aren't doing those already. If you're like, no, my routines are dialed in. Honestly, I don't know what you're doing here, but welcome. I'm happy to have you anyways. But these are some lifestyle glow ups and daily habits that I feel like help you have kind of that waterfall effect of like, I started focusing here of maybe not scrolling in the morning, but that's going to trickle over into those other habits. So one way that you could do that if you're struggling with scrolling in the morning is putting your phone in another room. Maybe you're going to end up eventually using something like a brick or like something to physically block social media from your phone, or maybe you delete your apps before you go to bed at night because that's free and why not? And then you can just re-add them in the morning. I follow some creators who actually delete their apps on Fridays and they re-download them Monday morning. Anything that kind of gives you a little bit of space from the action that we're trying to avoid that we feel like might be spilling into those other habits. These are like really small things that I feel like do make a big difference. Number one is cleaning and organizing your space. I feel like it is so true that your space really reflects your mind and what's going on internally, and the messier my space is, the messier I'm feeling internally. And I feel like it's a lot harder for me to focus. It's a lot harder for me to get things done. It's a lot easier to procrastinate because I'm like, oh my God, there's like all of this stuff everywhere. Like I really need to deal with that. Whereas if you're kind of keeping things together as you go, it just makes life easier. Like there's a lot less friction when you're trying to do things, when you're able to keep your space organized. The number one thing that I would recommend if you're really struggling to keep your space organized is to do a declutter and like actually get rid of things. In my experience, the reason that I was unable to keep my space clean is really because I just had too much stuff for the space that I was in, and I really needed to get rid of things. And something that I find really helpful about that is that it's similar to the way that like if you were to let go of a person, you're making space for something new, something better, something that fits you more to come in. I think the same is true of your things. Like if we're able to let go of the old outfits that don't really suit our current style, if we're able to let go of things that don't fit anymore, if we're able to let go of like past hobbies so that we can have space for new hobbies, it just gives you a lot more of a light energy in my mind. Another one that I think is really helpful is making your bed in the morning. It's just like that tiny little action that kind of sets the first tone for the day to make your bed right when you get out of it. It also prevents you from getting back into bed, so that's just an added little bonus. I feel like any kind of morning and evening rituals that kind of help ground you. So obviously a lot of what we talked about before and kind of your like mental and energy glow up, like reading, journaling, a gratitude practice, affirmations, any of those could go there. You could have your favorite drink in the morning, like maybe it's a tea, maybe it's having a little coffee ritual in the morning. Anything that kind of helps ground and center you before you have to bring in a lot more information, whether it's like checking your email, social media, hearing from all of your friends, like whatever it is, as long as you have like a little bit of peace with yourself in the morning, I feel like that is so impactful. Another way that I feel like you can have a really big lifestyle glow up is to really start planning out your week. I know that time blocking works for some people, like maybe you're really taking control of your schedule that way, but I feel like even just scheduling the small things, like something that you're really excited and looking forward to every week, makes a really big difference in how you show up throughout the week. Or maybe you're scheduling out when your workouts are going to happen, maybe you're booking workout classes, or you're making sure that you set a time on Sundays to go through your finances or meal prep. Anything that you can kind of block out throughout the week that's going to make your life easier, I feel like is very impactful. Or even just scheduling in like on Fridays after work, I'm going to clean the apartment so that it's clean for the weekend and I get to like really enjoy it versus just cleaning on Sunday. Another thing that I think will always be helpful is investing in yourself. And I don't mean necessarily like taking some kind of online course, although there are definitely a lot of like open courses out there now. Another lifestyle adjustment that I truly cannot recommend enough is finding some kind of hobby or activity that you enjoy that is not online. Let me actually go grab a notebook. Okay, I wanted to share a little list I made at the beginning of the year with you that's just activities that you can do that are not online. So I have puzzles, journal, baking, especially if you have like a cookbook, or maybe you can print out the recipe or write it down. Card games, reading, a long walk, especially with no headphones, anything that kind of gives you a little bit less of a stimulus, just because I feel like there is so much that we consume in a day that it can be really overwhelming. So anything to just kind of let your brain shut off for a minute. I put Pilates on here because I love Pilates, although admittedly it's a little bit hard to do no tech unless you're taking an actual class. A board game, painting pottery, a paint and sip with friends, heading to the farmer's market, maybe grabbing something seasonal to try a new recipe with, a coloring book, or you could even like print out just coloring pages that are free online, floral arrangements. Once we hit summer, I feel like you could even go outside and like try to just see what you can find on a walk. Crosswords, Scrabble, volunteering is another really good one to like get yourself out into your community. And then another one that I wrote down was like actually sending out paper cards, especially if you have grandparents. I feel like they love getting things in the mail, and it's just like a fun, cute little thing to do. Even more fun would be actually making the card. So that's just some ideas for you to kind of get you off your phone and into living your real life, because I feel like some parts of the like wanting to glow up are really spurred from not appreciating. I won't say not appreciating. I feel like a lot of that is spurred from just like being online and seeing what other people are doing. And I feel like if we really focus on living our own life to the fullest, then that's going to just create a lot more gratitude and joy in your day-to-day versus being online and like comparing your life to everything that you see on the internet, which in reality is probably not that accurate as to like what that person's day-to-day experience is like. And the last one on here is stop waiting for permission or asking for permission. I feel like it's really easy to always ask other people for their opinion on like something that you want to do, but the reality is sitting with your own thoughts and being able to make that decision for yourself is so much more freeing. And I feel like it's a practice in committing to yourself and believing that you already have the answers. So this is your sign, if there's something that you've been thinking about doing, to just take their chance on yourself. Like, why not bet on yourself? Okay, and then the last section that I have is the physical glow up. And I put this last because honestly, I don't think that it's that important. I think it is important to take good care of yourself, but I feel like a lot of glow up content is like very external appearance and the way that other people perceive you, when in reality, I think if we were to focus on just like our own mental energy and day-to-day life, we would find that to be a lot more impactful than any of these like physical glow up things. Although I will say a lot of these are still focused on like your day-to-day health and wellness, which is obviously going to make you feel good. And that is why it's still here. Number one is extremely boring, but it is just drink more water. And I say this mostly to myself because I feel like I am chronically dehydrated, and nothing impacts your energy more, in my opinion, than being dehydrated or like not sleeping enough. And those are kind of two cornerstones too of, I feel like, just your mood in general. I feel like personally, I check in with myself often when I'm in a bad mood and I'm like, oh, well, did you sleep well last night? Have you had enough to eat? Have you had enough water? Have you had too much caffeine? I feel like checking in on some of those basic things a lot of times will lead you to realize that maybe you're missing one of those kind of foundational components, and that really does impact your mood quite a lot. So being able to really cover the basics is extremely helpful. Number two is having a consistent sleep schedule. I love my Hatch alarm clock, and I don't think that you need a fancy alarm clock, but the reason that I love my Hatch is just because it's very scheduled and I like don't touch it the way that I used to change my phone alarm. So I find it really helpful to just have a consistent alarm. Like my Hatch goes off every morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. Even on weekends, I know that that can be really hard. Like obviously I still sleep in sometimes, but the more consistent you can be in your sleep routine, the better, because your body really gets acclimated to that. And when it's off, you're also going to feel off. And so if you have a really inconsistent sleep schedule, it can be really hard to get consistently good quality sleep, which is overall going to make you feel a lot better. Daily movement of some kind, whether you're going on a long walk, maybe you're habit stacking, listening to a podcast, maybe you're adding in a third habit stack and you're doing like a cute little hair mask, or you're wearing your little under eye patches, whatever you want. I feel like a long walk is always so helpful for being creative, clearing your mind, just like getting outside, especially if the weather is nice. If it's not as nice though, YouTube has incredible workouts. I really don't think that you need to be buying like a fancy subscription to anything, although I will say the Aloe wellness app is free, and I think the Nike running app is also free, so those are really good options if you're looking for like something that's a little bit more in depth or just consistent, because I know sometimes it's hard when you're doing YouTube workouts, like unless it's somebody who's posted years and years of content, sometimes you just like run out. So I feel like those are both really good apps. And the Aloe app I think also has like some nutrition stuff, some meditations, any of those kinds of things are in that app, and it's free if you just sign up for like an Aloe rewards account or something. It's free. Skincare is another one that I feel like is always included in glow up videos, and I honestly don't think that you need to spend a ton of money on skincare. I feel like if you just cover the basics of like a face wash, a moisturizer, an SPF, 9 times out of 10 you're gonna be good. And I like really struggled with acne. I'll link some of the videos on that. I really was struggling, and I personally feel like one of the biggest things that made me struggle more with acne and made it last a lot longer is that I was not gentle enough with my skin. Like, I think acne is very sensitive skin, and you can use an exfoliant. I totally understand that that's probably necessary, but I was like drowning my skin in exfoliants, and it made my acne so much worse because then I ended up with a compromised skin barrier, and then bacteria gets in and it's a whole mess. So personally, I would recommend saving yourself the trouble and the money and focusing on just like a really simple skincare routine. And then you already have the habit. So if you need to add in a product later, you can, but you're building the habit with just like the basics of washing your face and putting on moisturizer and sunscreen, or maybe it's a 2-in-1. That's personally what I'm using and loving. Another thing that I really love is just ice, like little ice facials, either just dunking your face in a bowl of ice water or using a piece of ice. Like, you don't need a fancy ice roller. Yes, that's nice, but it's not actually that necessary when you could just use a bowl of ice or a piece of ice. And you might think that holding the piece of ice is kind of crazy. You could use like a little paper towel or just a washcloth or something. But if you keep your ice roller in the freezer, that is also quite cold to start. All right, bestie, that is all I have for today. I truly believe the best glow up is becoming a version of yourself that you're proud of. And I would bet money that a disciplined version of you that does what she says she's going to do is a version of you you would be very proud of. And that does not require spending any money at all. I feel like these are all things that have had a very dramatic impact on how I look, how I feel, and it really is just focused largely on doing the things that you say you're going to do for yourself and giving yourself that accountability, because it's a lot easier obviously to not. But even if you're doing something simple, like if you say you're going to work out 3 times a week, being able to build that habit and still acknowledge and meet yourself where you're at, like maybe you're exhausted, maybe you had a bad night of sleep, maybe you only have 15 minutes. That's still 15 minutes of working out that you previously weren't going to do. And definitely give yourself a break when you need it. But I think the best thing you could possibly do on your glow up journey is just show up for yourself in whatever capacity you have, even if it's a little bit low energy, or maybe it's 15 minutes of stretching because you wanted to get your daily movement in. That still counts. And this is your reminder that you don't need money. You probably just need to be disciplined in the routines and habits that are going to help you look and feel your best. That's all I have for today, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.